Tingles with flyby. Daily ASMR videos. Hello, my tinglings. Today I am going to be talking. So there was a person who commented on a video I released a couple months ago, and it's been a bit crazy for my schedule, so I haven't really gotten around to making the video to reply to that. So I'm doing that now. So the video that I got a comment on was on my bug collection, and the comment was kind of basically insinuating that it was cruel to make a bug collection, and brought into question the quality of the degree that I'm getting in that we would make a bug collection. So I wanted to talk about that and what I guess my reasons are for disagreeing with that perspective. But I think it ties into something that's a bit larger than that as well, and that's to do with the squeamishness of people who are very disconnected from death, and that death is an important part of life. So I also want to talk about animal rights activists, but I'll do that second. So those are going to be our two topics. So the first one, talking about bugs. So some of this is going to come, I've opened up over here a document from an entomologist, and he talks about basically he had gotten into a heated discussion, I think, on social media with somebody back and forth going, talking about this very issue. And so he decided to distill his thoughts into this document that could then help other people understand the perspective. So one of the first, and basically there's nothing that he says that I disagree with, but I just want to give him credit. His name is Greg Pohl, but I'll put a link in the description to this document as well. So I'm going to tell you a lot of his arguments because they're kind of better than the ones I could think of as well. And just better articulated and more robust, probably because he's been doing it a lot longer. So the first thing that he talks about is the very different biological reality for insects compared to mammals. So for pretty much, I don't think there's any mammal that has any high number of young. And so, like a high number would be considered like 10 to 15 rather than, in the thousands and thousands and thousands. So there's a big difference in reproductive capacity and also in life history strategy that goes along with that, in that there's not, pretty much all insect behavior, none of it's actually passed from parent to child. There is no parental investment beyond basically just making the eggs and then, creating you a nest or whatever to protect you while you're growing but there's no investment beyond that. And so it's just a really different, very different way of looking at things. And the way that insects kind of act towards themselves and each other, and this is within, kind of a favorable colony or that sort of thing, where everyone's kind of on the same side rather than, like warring colonies and that sort of thing. The individual is really not important. The queen is important, since that, if there is a queen, like in honeybees and that sort of thing, but workers, like they are not important at all. And so, and that's just the value that the insects have themselves and for these things. So for ants and that sort of thing. Other insects, it might be a bit different, but you just have to understand they have such a different strategy for life, and a lot of these things don't live, most things don't live like a year, no. Most things live very short periods of time as well, and so you're not really taking away a lot by killing them, because the whole thing, you're preventing reproduction, but there's so many other organisms, I guess, to take that place. So, making a collection of single organisms is really not going to have any impact on the populations at all, ever, really. So that's the first thing, is just the strategies. So that's part of what makes insects resilient to collecting. And for entomologists who study these organisms, they may collect a large number at a time, because it's pretty much the only way to get a good sample of what's actually going on, and they're not going to stay still, and it's actually more cruel kind of if you don't kill them, because if they're confined, then they'll start attacking each other and that sort of thing. But part of the reason that entomologists kind of have to kill things in order to study them is part of the limitations of our own biology, and that's because compared to us, insects are tiny. And so to identify something, to first of all maybe say the correct genus, much less the correct species, they often have to be dissected under a microscope to even know what you're looking at. And so to be able to protect these species, know what species are out there or anything like that, you kind of have, you will not know these things unless you actually kill them. And so it's kind of a sacrifice of a small number, so for the benefit of the rest. They're also really poorly known. There are a lot of insects that have never been catalogued in the most populated areas of the world. So in the US you have tons, in Europe there are lots of bugs that have never been caught, which means they've therefore never been catalogued, identified. So if they disappear off the face of the earth, then we would never know about that. And that's a big issue, because most of our biomass, well, this gets down to microscopic organisms as well, where we know very little about what's going on, but most of our biomass is actually held in insects and single-celled organisms. Anyway, that's the microorganisms isn't what I'm going into right now. So it's important because we are having impacts on these creatures, whether we like to think it or not. And so, yeah, it's important to understand that. So just basically the only way for us to know more about these insects is by killing some of them so that we can study them in more detail. And these sort of things, using dead specimens, is how we have learned more about mammals, about birds, about everything like that. And so we're at a, time with insects where we haven't caught that many. We don't have a body of knowledge, and we need that body of knowledge to actually even understand what's going on with them. So it's also important, rather than just taking a photograph, as I said, many things you can't actually differentiate between two species unless you look at them under a microscope. And it's not realistic to look at these organisms under a microscope in the sort of detail that you would need to make positive identifications without that. But it's also important in other ways. So within museums all around the world, there are collections of voucher specimens, and this is going to touch on my second topic as well. But these voucher specimens are not just insects and not just fish, but there are mammal specimens and that sort of thing as well. And specimens are important. You don't need very high numbers for mammals. You only really need one. But anyway, because they're needed, but we'll just concentrate on bugs right now. Anyway, for insects, they're important because, like, let's say, 100 years ago, if an entomologist was studying bugs and they said, oh, well, this is this species, if they hadn't kept a specimen, then once we get molecular and DNA data and understand new methods for reinterpreting that old data, there's no way to actually reinterpret that. Whereas if you actually have a voucher specimen, then, we can actually go back, see what DNA we can extract, and then use it that way. So that's really handy. And vouchers are really important as a confirmation that a particular organism was at a particular place at a particular time. And so this is something we talked a lot about in my plant ID course, was taking voucher specimens for, well, that's what our herbarium was taking plants and drying them, basically preserving them for how you would in a museum, or herbarium is kind of a specific plant museum type thing. The other thing that's important is identification is important for a lot of reasons. So insects have interactions with us as humans, parasitic, with our pets, with our crops and that sort of thing. And so being able to identify what particular species is causing issues is important, and that has to be done. It can only really be done, as I've said, identification can only be done under the microscope with accuracy. So these are some of his arguments. It's also to know about biodiversity, and the other thing is that in a lot of cases it doesn't actually really matter who's doing the collecting. So amateurs can go out and create their own bug collections and collect from around, and if you keep records for what you collect, that can actually be a really invaluable resource for, what insects exist at a particular place and time. And that can be used, by scientists, by entomologists, and everything like that. Like, there are more people who are bug collectors who are amateurs, and being an amateur bug collector just contributes invaluably to the information that we have in the field of entomology. So, I think that's basically those arguments. My own personal argument as well is that our lives require the killing of insects. So for going after pest species or anything like that, we have to kill insects. Whether we do it directly or if farmers do it, it's something that has to happen to ensure our own survival. We are competing with these organisms at the end of the day. And so that's one aspect where I feel like it's not really a good argument to say that just kill. I killed probably 20 insects in the whole time I was doing this study. So it was not a high number at all. There would be ones that have cropped up to take their places immediately back, I've not really had it because it was all right from within my house. And as somebody who's studying ecology and conservation, I understand that all of these things work together. So even if I have more of an interest, I'm a very generalist. So if I have any leaning, it's a little bit towards mammals. But I do have interests in everything. I'm more interested, how does the whole system work together? And so understanding insects for that and what's going on with them, I kind of have to be an entomologist, a mammologist, a herpetologist, I have to be everything, a botanist, to understand how all these things fit together. I have to have all the skills that I need so that if an issue crops up, I have the skills that I need in order to deal with that. And catching insects isn't necessarily the easiest pursuit, and so that was part of the point of that project, was to begin to learn the skills of identification and collection, which I did learn that it's very hard to ID without a microscope, because I don't have a microscope at home, and we didn't have a designated time to use a microscope, because if I had a microscope I would have done a lot better. But anyway, I am going to take a course next year that goes into that a bit more. Anyway, I could go on probably another 10 minutes, but I want to get on to my next topic too, so we'll move on, which is, I think a lot of people don't really have problems with insects because our biologies are so different that there's kind of a natural understanding of that. And the thing for me is, I don't find it odd at all. There was one time I spent this time, there was an ant that had fallen into my bath, and I took the time and I pulled it out, put it on the side, and it looked like it wasn't doing too well. It looked like it was dead. but I was kind of like blowing on it because it looked like it was covered in water. And like I spent, probably 15 minutes just kind of just gently blowing on it to try and get the water off. And then, it came back to life. And so, to me, that's not at odds with then going out and, killing another thing, because it's important for my understanding, I guess, and important in being able to study these things, to learn and know more about what's going on. So I don't think just going around killing things indiscriminately is good, but when there is something that can be learned from it, I do think there can be value in it. Okay, but now on to my more controversial opinion, but something that I think is super important, and that is about animal rights. The thing that kind of got me thinking about this is we've been talking about the overabundance of kangaroos within our regions here. And part of the reason that there is an overabundance of kangaroos has been the exclusion of dingoes. And so really the only really realistic way to take care of the problem is to cull kangaroos, to have people go out and shoot kangaroos. And for me, it would be best if we then used the meat and the leather, so that's not just going to waste, because I think that's just, that's no good at all to just, have something like that happen and not use it. But some people, anyway, I think it's a bit controversial because people have opinions about cute animals particularly, but I know, a lot of, anyway, there's a lot of media around it. I don't actually think the numbers of people who support these things are as high as the media you get. I just think there are a lot of people who are very in your face about it. Which, is fine. People have their opinions, but I think it's a very, as I delve, because I think I've had a little leaning towards those things and thought, oh, okay, yeah, that could be cool and that sort of thing. And it just seems like it's just okay, well, the answer is just don't kill any animals. But as I get into ecology and, conservation and these sort of things, it just becomes so apparent that that's a very short-sighted way to think, because there's all of these impacts by excluding killing of animals, basically. And, a big one for me is, feral cats here are massive, decimating the environment, and lots of people would say, oh, well, you can't kill cats, but anyway, cats need to be killed because we have, cute little, what are they? Oh, we have cute little Dunarts, the cutest little thing. One day I'll get a Dunart, and then I'll show you guys, probably a few years off. The cutest little things, but, feral cats just go around, just eat them up. Anyway. But even something like kangaroo that's native on the landscape, because they're not being controlled by dingo populations, they are overabundant, and even though they're just, grazers, they just go around and eat vegetation. When you actually start to think, that's having massive impacts on all these other species. Because if vegetation is gone, that takes away all these little places that your little reptiles and little birds will hide, or grass seeds that they might go and eat, your insects where they go and they eat off the vegetation, gives them a place to hide as well from their other predators, but also means that they can come out and get eaten by some of these other reptiles and everything like that. And so you get this ecosystem that's just got so much less going on because we're a bit squeamish about killing kangaroos. And to me, I'm like, well, it's not looking at these other things, because if you're telling the story from the perspective of the zebra finch, which is a pet bird that I had as a kid in the US, and I know a lot of people actually have them around the US. They come from Australia, they're native to here. And they used to be all around here, and in the past 30 years, they can barely be found anymore. I think their range has decreased to about 10% of what it was 30 years ago. And a lot of that sort of thing is happening because they're seed-eating birds, and so they're competing with kangaroos for grasses. And so when there's too many kangaroos, the kangaroos eat all the grasses down to the bare nubs. They don't end up setting seed, and that's taking away a food source from the zebra finches. That's not exactly established, that's for sure what's going on, but just based on what I'm seeing so far, it seems very likely, because we're doing a study on kangaroo grazing right now. But so I think that, and it's also vegetarianism, veganism. I don't think it is a problem to have a subpopulation that has these things. I think that's very good, because we would probably overconsume meat. I agree with that. That being said, I don't think it makes sense for everybody to not eat meat, and nor is it healthy for everybody to not eat meat. Some people need to eat meat. And so it depends on your biology. But anyway, but it's also because there are lands that you can't put agriculture onto that are really good grazing lands. That's so much of Australia. And it would actually be better here if we just let the kangaroos go wild there and then ate more kangaroo rather than sheep and cows, because sheep and cows actually do a bit of damage to the soils, because they get these little lichen crusts, and the lichens haven't evolved with hooves, and so they break down. But anyway, so that's my kind of thoughts on that, is that while it seems, if you're thinking on a very individual level, yeah, it is sad to see a creature dying or think about creatures dying, but but we have such massive issues with so many species going extinct that we don't really have the luxury to be squeamish about a few animals dying, or else we're going to lose whole species off the face of the earth. And I guess that's my feeling on that, is just, it's very short-sighted and going to lead us, if we kind of have like a no killing at all, then it doesn't lead us to a place that I don't want to be. I don't want to see, zebra finches go extinct. I don't want to see all these, little reptiles and everything like that. I think they all deserve to live and have a place in the world. And so I think when we have an overabundance of kangaroos, the thing that makes sense is to take care of the kangaroos. Anyway, so that's my feeling on, animals is that it can actually be cruel to other animals to not take an intervention and to just let things lie. So, I like to kill bugs and I want to kill kangaroos. Not really me personally, but I mean I would. I'm worried about it. Anyway, I don't want to have a gun. Anyway, but yeah. So, that's my thoughts. You know me, I'm always telling you what I think, even if it's unpopular, but I do think it's important. I think it's really important, actually, because it's taken me, years into this degree to kind of come around to this perspective, and I think we need more of this perspective in our world, or we're going to lose more of these animals, because in some ways you just have to do what has to be done, even if it's unpleasant, because otherwise something even worse is going to happen. And that can lead to a result that's even worse, which is the disappearance of these species, And we don't actually know what impact that could have on us. And the impacts that these things have generally have a huge time lag. It's an instant gratification world. This is serious time scales we're talking about. Could be 50 or 100 years until we see that this thing did a key function and it's degrading everything, and hey, we're going to be able to support 1/10 of the humans that we used to be able to. And that could lead to lots of problems. Probably more genocides, wars. Anyway. So, end of the day, extinction is not good. So, my encouragement to all of you is to have a bit of nuance when you think about whether animals should be killed. And try not to be very individualistic and think about if you were one particular animal, but rather think about a system as a whole, and that if something's out of balance, you kind of do want to bring it back into balance as much as possible so that the most species can get the most benefit from that area. So, that's my word on that. So, go collect bugs. You can help entomologists, and just think with a bit of nuance about animals and their potential deaths. Sounds really cool, doesn't it? But I don't know, but extinction is worse, because that's lots of animals dying just because they can't reproduce or they can't find food. That's birds just starving, flying, not being able to find food, because, hey, kangaroos have eaten it all. And, because we've transformed the countryside. But anyway, that's what I got to say. And I think I have tried to end this video for about 5 times. So, let's get it out with. Okay, well, I will talk to you later. And just a little preview tomorrow. Somebody did request that I do a vegan restaurant, so I am doing a vegan restaurant tomorrow. I'm not against veganism, vegetarianism, as I said. I think it should remain a small percentage of the population. I don't think it should grow a lot. But I do think that everybody could benefit by eating more meals that don't have meat in them as well, and having a bit more, variety in their diets, so not just relying solely upon meat. Anyway, so I hope you guys enjoy the vegan restaurant roleplay tomorrow. And nice backdrop against this video. So, there we go. Anyway, I will see you tomorrow. Feeding you lots of lovely vegan food and cocktails. Ooh, cocktails. Anyway, I will see you then. Let me know down in the comments what you hate about what I said, what you love about what I said, what you agree with, what you disagree with. And hopefully some of you are asleep and found this mildly relaxing as well. Okay, well, thank you to that original person who did comment to me. As I said, I do like to take these perspectives in, and I can appreciate that perspective. I disagree with it, but I can understand where you're coming from. But I'm coming from a different place, and I think it would actually be a really bad degree of mine if they weren't trying to prepare me in the skills that I would need to actually be able to take care of the systems that I'll hopefully be a steward over. So, yep, that's, I'm really not going to do this well. I will see you later, and I may make another video on this topic if we get a bit of discussion going in the comments section or more questions. So let me know what you're interested in knowing about or what you think. And I will see you tomorrow. Goodbye. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to go down and hit the thumbs up button. That way it'll be added to your liked videos so you can come back and find it in a year or two when you've forgotten all about it. Be sure to hit subscribe as well if you aren't already one of my official tinglings, so that you can know about my new uploads, which come every single day. I also do a viewers appreciation video each month on the 25th, featuring you. All you have to do for your chance to be featured is comment on any of my videos at least one time during the month. And I've done things like painting someone, or I did a finger spelling of people's names, all sorts of fun things, or sending people on vacations. That's the annual tingling travel competition. So there's lots of fun things you definitely want to get yourself talked about, because I will say your name if you're going to be featured. So be sure to comment for your chance. And otherwise, just go look through my channel. I've got hundreds and hundreds of videos, so I'm sure you can find the next perfect video to watch to continue your tingle buzz. And I will hopefully